Today's film is not necessarily a film that many people are fond of. Reason being because it's advertised as a horror film and it pretty much isn't. It's mostly a love story, which I agree is extremely misleading. So this would be the 1977 film Tintorera, which was directed by René Garcia Jr. The film is distributed by United Film Distribution Company, and there are actually two versions of the film. The original cut, which was released for US consumption, is 86 minutes, and the actual Mexican version of the film is 128 minutes. The Mexican version of the film is considered to have a lot more skin in it, as well as a bit more gore. I honestly cannot vouch for that. I did watch two different versions of the film, but the version I watched, which claims to have been the full version, also had scenes that were missing, so I cannot verify that for you. So the film itself was actually in cooperation with Mexico and British film companies. So the film does alternate between English and Spanish. Depending which version of the film you do watch, you do have an option of putting subtitles on in either version, whichever version you require. Today's film wasn't necessarily my favorite when I first started off watching it. I will be honest, I was expecting an actual horror film because when I had found this film, it claimed to have been a Hispanic version of Jaws. So I was expecting somewhat of a thriller or an adventure film, and I made it through the first 20 minutes of the film. I stopped it just to look up the synopsis to make sure I was looking at the right film, and unfortunately I was. Up until that point, all I had seen were just smoochy love story stuff. No one had died. You did see some shark footage here and there, but there really wasn't too much going on. Oddly enough, when I did turn the film back on, that pretty much was when the first death happened, which was slightly exaggerated because the person swimming pretty much kicks up her feet in the air, so it looks more like she is doing an underwater handstand, but okay. The film Tintorera was actually based off of a novel written by an oceanographer named Ramon Bravo, and he has somewhat of a very interesting background himself. He was a swimmer who competed in the 1948 Summer Olympics. He later did take up an interest in oceanography. He mainly specialized in shark studies, and he also handled the cinematography for this film. So pretty much scenes where you do see live sharks swimming around, he did video that. The main version from the intros of the films that I did watch, with the American release, you mostly had a bunch of fish and ocean type scenes. With the Hispanic version, it was mostly just footage of the shark swimming around, so there was definitely a lot more attention on the shark. And of course, with Hispanic cinema, there's a lot of attention to landscape. You have wide landscape shots. You also have a lot of wildlife shots as well. So it's a story that definitely does take its time. It doesn't necessarily cut to the chase and give you the gore. And obviously this was the 70s, so stories had a slower pace. This one definitely does have a very slow pace. And like I've said, it mainly focuses on the love story aspect of the film. And it's pretty much very close to being an X-rated soap opera. One of the main themes of the film, in my opinion, is also the emphasis on learning to enjoy life, as well as the film explores different relationships, not necessarily the romantic relationships in the film, but also the relationship between the two male characters. And I'm not implying that they had a romantic interest in one another, but as far as the friendship and camaraderie, as well as what one of the men learned and took away from the other. So there definitely is some growth, not necessarily in the sense that you may think or assume, but the lead character, Steven, he definitely does grow and change as an individual throughout the film. The main reason why he has come to vacation in Mexico is because he suffered somewhat of a breakdown induced by stress, and his doctor had placed him on a 3-month leave from work. So he has gone to vacation in Cancun. To my understanding, Cancun wasn't as big a vacation spot as it is now, so the lead character, Steven, is played by Hugo Stiglitz, who in the film is an American-born Mexican who does travel in order to get some rest and relaxation. During this period, Hugo Stiglitz was a well-known actor. The majority of his well-known roles are from the 70s and 80s. He also did enjoy a lot of international features, working with Rene Garcia, as he was somewhat of a regular within his films, and director Quentin Tarantino in his film *Inglourious Basterds* also does honor Hugo Stiglitz by naming one of the bastards after Hugo, so definitely very interesting as well. Some of Hugo Stiglitz' better known films, other than Tintorera, are *Night of a Thousand Cats*, *Under the Volcano*, and *Cielo Rojo*. So he definitely has had quite a bit of work. More recently, I had seen him in a film called *Instructions Not Included*. He plays a father character called Johnny Bravo. Towards the beginning of the film, Steven does take an interest in a fellow vacationer, a British woman named Patricia. They do hit it off for a while, but eventually have a falling out because Steven, for some reason, cannot decide whether or not he cares for Patricia or if he's just passing time, so she tosses him aside and picks up with another guy named Miguel. Miguel is played by actor Andres Garcia, who is also another film regular of Rene Garcia Jr. Andres Garcia also did have somewhat of a reputation of being a sex symbol and mostly did play the stereotypical macho roles. I believe nowadays he's mostly just seen in soap opera type media. Fiona Lewis does play Patricia, the love interest of Steven, who is stolen away by Miguel. She really doesn't play too much of a role within the film. Her main focus is just to bring the pair together, which continues to allow the film to move forward. She also happens to be the first shark victim, which is roughly about a 25 to 30 minute wait before you finally get to see someone die after all of the smoochies. Steven and Miguel do start off as rivals for a time. They eventually grow to become friends, and at some point in time they both meet up with a woman named Gabriella, and they start a three-way relationship. So they all basically just kind of become a big clump. They do continue with their shark hunting activities. Obviously, Gabriella does not approve, but gets over this. Eventually, Miguel does fall victim to the same shark while they are out hunting sharks. And the scene itself seems a bit exaggerated. It gives the impression that he was bitten in half because you see some flippered legs floating to the bottom of the sea, and the shark swims away chomping on his head, which is kind of funny. The scene's not as gruesome as it sounds. It's pretty cheesy, and by the time you get to the second death, you're pretty much thinking, I waited for this. But Gabriella, unable to get over the death of Miguel, leaves Steven, and Steven, who is taking a page from Miguel's book, decides to not wallow in sorrow, but actually enjoy life and partake within the festivities. So he does head out for dinner the same evening that he is dumped, and he meets up with two other women. They are invited to a random party. Eventually, at some point in time, somebody decides that the whole group should go skinny dipping, and this pretty much just brings on the third and final shark attack, pretty much. So Steven does survive this attack, which ironically he had met up with two women that had previously shared him. So obviously Miguel and Gabriella were not his first three-way romance, but okay, I guess three isn't always a crowd. But Steven, I guess having had enough, decides that he's going to go out, kill the shark, and the following evening he does go out, and this is where the two versions of the film do differ slightly. The version I saw, it is implied that Steven does injure the shark, but he also loses his life as well. The second version, which I had really wanted to see, but I unfortunately could not find that cut, Steven loses his arm, and while he's recovering in the hospital, just reminisces about his relationship with Miguel and Gabriela. So I guess not really missing too much. I just wanted to see the arm bit. But like I've said, this is definitely not a full-on horror film. I would definitely say that it was misrepresented, and it pretty much is just a love story. Maximum, you only see 3 shark attacks in addition to the implied shark attack, which you really don't see too much of, so I really don't count the 4th. So some of you may probably be wondering, if this really wasn't a horror film, why did I bother to review it? It's still considered a shark attack film for some odd reason. It also does have somewhat of a cult status of itself, but honestly, I really didn't like this film when I first started watching it. I stopped and started the film on various occasions, and it took me several days to get through it because I got bored with all of the romancy nonsense, and if I wanted to watch a chick flick, I'd visit my sister and watch TV with her. Honestly, as I was looking into the film, I was more interested in the time period that this film came from. It was a very influential period in which different countries were developing partnerships in order to work together. So this definitely allowed for Rene Garcia to have a larger budget, get better actors, not necessarily produce better quality films, but he could definitely put a B quality film in the theaters with a larger budget, with not only international actors but big name actors. So it's definitely a shortcut to try and get the quality of work that someone wants to produce. And 70s definitely were a very productive period for the director, mostly due to these partnerships. Obviously, once the mid-80s, late 80s came about, these partnerships gradually waned, and he went back to developing low-budget Mexican B films. But it's more the history and time period which interested me, and that's pretty much one of the main reasons why I grew to respect the film, is because I realized all of the work and cooperation that went on behind this. So I would say that alone should be reason enough to acknowledge the film. Whether or not you actually choose to watch the film, or if you would rather just disagree, then everyone's entitled to their own opinions. We will just have to agree to disagree. But that is pretty much all I have for you guys today, and I will talk to you later.